Okay, hey everyone. Welcome to the SYB webinar, Dirty Electricity, what it is and how to clean it. We're going to get started today. The main event is the Q&A with our two very special guests, BD Erickson and Andrew McAfee. To get us started, I have prepared a very short 10-minute presentation explaining what dirty electricity is. If you already know, it's only 10 minutes and it'll get everyone kind of caught up to the same page, and then we'll get right into Q&A so you can have your questions about this very mysterious topic answered by two of the leading experts. So give me 1 second here to share that presentation. Again, this is only 10 minutes, and then we will get right into the Q&A. Welcome, everyone, to today's very special webinar, Dirty Electricity, what it is and how to clean it. Briefly about me, my name is Art Blank. I'm the CEO of Shield Your Body and the host of the Healthier Tech podcast. Formerly, I taught on the faculty of the University of Southern California School of Engineering, and along with my father, Dr. Martin Blank, co-authored Overpowered on the Science of EMF Health Effects. This all follows a 20-year career in software engineering. So, to explain dirty electricity, perhaps it's best to start by explaining what clean electricity is. Regular electricity is conducted into our homes over electrical wiring. Most people receive their power from the utility company over the power grid, although some do generate their power locally at their own home. This electricity that we receive is at a standardized voltage and frequency. In the US, most homes receive electricity at a power of 120 volts and a frequency of 60 hertz. In Europe, voltage is generally between 220 and 240, and the frequency is 50 hertz. And if you measured this electricity with a device called an oscilloscope, that electricity should appear as a clean sine wave, as you see here on the screen. The problem is that if you measure the electricity in many of our homes, it won't look clean. It will look dirty. And the term dirty electricity refers to variations, spikes and surges in the voltage and the frequency. The clean sine wave we should expect becomes dirty with all this interference. When the dirty electricity occurs, currents flowing through our electrical wiring deviate from the standards we expect. The electricity becomes dirty when polluted by the byproducts from all our appliances and devices and chargers that are plugged into the grid. Now, while some of our home appliances, such as blenders, are a big source of dirty electricity, another significant source is power inverters. There are two types of electricity, and you've probably heard of both. They are called AC, or alternating current, like we get when we plug into an outlet, and DC, or direct current, like we get when we use a battery. The difference between these two different types of electrical flow aren't important here. What is important is that we often need to convert them. So for instance, when we charge our phones, we are taking AC electricity from the wall outlet and converting it to DC power for the phone battery. Similarly, if we have a solar power system at our house, that system charges batteries. So in order to use the power stored in those batteries to power the appliances in our homes, we convert the battery's DC power to our home's AC power. To convert AC to DC and vice versa, we use something called an inverter. And these inverters cause a lot of dirty electricity. And modern homes tend to have quite a few of these. Now, in terms of the health effects, dirty electricity has been linked with many negative health outcomes. In his well-known and highly regarded book, Dr. Sam Millam shows that the electrification of our lives has led to an epidemic of what he refers to as the diseases of civilization. Diseases that did not occur in populations until they were exposed to EMF from the electrical grid. These diseases of civilization include Alzheimer's, infertility, depression, heart disease, and Lou Gehrig's disease. In separate work published by Dr. Magda Havas and Dave Stetzer in 2004, they found that filtering out dirty electricity reduced symptoms associated with electrical hypersensitivity, such as chronic fatigue, depression, headaches, body aches, and pains, ringing in the ears, dizziness, impaired sleep, memory loss, and confusion. Now, if you hire a professional to measure the DE in your home, they will often use an oscilloscope, a device that looks something like what you see here on the screen right now. And if your electricity is basically clean, it will show a display that looks kind of like this yellow line, a nice, clean sine wave. And if you have a lot of dirty electricity, that sine wave will look more like the yellow line on this screen. But a lot of people don't hire experts to do this work, even though you should. And even if you do hire an expert, the amount of dirty electricity in your home can change over time due to changes in the grid or how much stuff you have plugged in. There are a lot of variables. And basically, no one is going to pay an expert to be in their home full-time, 24/7 to monitor an oscilloscope. And that's where consumer-grade dirty electricity meters come in, also called EMI line monitors, because they measure the amount of electromagnetic interference, or EMI, on your power system. And here you can see the EMI line monitor from Satic. All you do is plug it into an outlet, and voila, just take the measurement. It really is that easy. And you can see it displays EMI in the units of millivolts. And Satic recommends that you should reduce the amount of dirty electricity if that number goes above 100. Now, a quick note that because dirty electricity flows on the electrical wiring and outlets, that means many devices intended to measure and clean dirty electricity use plugs that depend on your grid, right? Because power grids are different in each country. So if you have an EMI line monitor made for North America and you bring it to England, you can't use it because it won't fit in the plug. Satic's plug-in meters and filters are designed for both North America and the UK. Now, once you've measured, and if you have a lot of dirty electricity, how do you address it? Well, the first thing I want to emphasize is that standard ways of defending against EMF don't really work against dirty electricity. Because with most types of EMF, distance will protect you. The power of EMF diminishes exponentially with distance. That means if you double the amount of distance from the source of the EMF, you're cutting your exposure by 75%. But with dirty electricity, unfortunately, distance does not reduce your exposure because DE is conducted along the wires in your home. Getting further away from the source doesn't help you. So the first thing you should do is unplug stuff you don't need. That doesn't mean you never need it, but maybe you don't need it all the time. Unplug as much as you can and see if that helps with the dirty electricity. In a lot of cases, it will. Then just plug it back in only when you need it, right? TVs are not on 24/7. Your blender is not on 24/7. Chargers are not on and being used 24/7. And so unplug everything you don't need when you're not using it. And once you've done that, and if you still have additional dirty electricity that you want to clean up, that's where filters come in, like the Satic Pure Power and Power Perfect filters. The Pure Power filter, seen here on the left, is a plug-in unit. These are very easy to install. Just plug them into an outlet, and these allow you to clean up DE on a specific outlet. The Power Perfect filter, like you see on the right, is a wire-in unit. This means a professional must install it. Literally, they must wire it into the electrical system in your home. Now, we just addressed traditional dirty electricities, like the Satic models. And that's what most people think of when they talk about cleaning dirty electricity. Standard DE filters, like the ones from Satic, clean the energy from the hot and neutral conductors. In other words, you can think of it, they clean the dirty electricity from the two prongs on a plug, like you see right here. What they don't clean is the ground, right? The ground is the third prong, again, as seen highlighted in this photo. And it connects to the grounding conductor in your home's wiring. This is used to make the electrical wiring of our various products safer. And when you use standard dirty electricity filters in your home, you are leaving this ground unaddressed. Now, a lot of things in your home are grounded. This includes your computer, your TV, your refrigerator, most appliances, in fact, and actually a heck of a lot of things. Anything with the third prong on the plug is grounded. Now, I want to highlight that this also applies to grounding products, things like grounding mats. And more than that, a lot of types of EMF protection are grounded, like shielding paint and canopies. All of these are plugged into the grounding conductor, which means they can conduct EMF hazards like dirty electricity closer to your body. So when addressing dirty electricity, it is also important to assess and address the dirty electricity on the grounding conductor. And that's where the NCB comes in. The NCB, short for nuisance current blocker, is a groundbreaking patent-pending invention from EMF consultant Andrew McAfee. In short, the NCB makes grounding your body safer by, among other features, filtering out the dirty electricity from your grounding conductor. And just like with the Satic filters, it comes in a plug-in version and a wire-in version. You use the plug-in NCB to help clean dirty electricity from the grounding conductor on a specific outlet, and the wire-in Pro version to clean an entire grounding conductor. So there you have it. That's dirty electricity in a nutshell. What causes it, what it does to you, how to measure it, and how to clean it. Excellent. So now we can get to the main event. 1 second here to share my screen again. Oops, wrong screen. Apologies. Oh, and to answer a question that I'm sure several of you have, yes, this is being recorded, and yes, you will get the link to it tomorrow. Okay, so now to answer, like I said, that was the sort of top level nutshell of what dirty electricity is. But now we have the real experts here to join us to answer all of your questions about dirty electricity, as well as the NCB and the Satic product lines. We have Andrew McAfee, who is the inventor of the NCB, and BD Erickson, the CEO of Satic. Andrew became electrically sensitive in 2001 after moving into a brand new home with his wife. Charles Keene of EMFservices.com helped them identify and correct the numerous wiring violations that caused the unhealthy environment. Keene and Carl Riley worked with Andrew in his next two homes to resolve their new issues. Andrew's full-time career as a professional musician became exceedingly difficult to perform. And in 2007, he left the symphony to join the music faculty at UNC Chapel Hill. Through his website, Andrew received many requests for EMF help, and his outreach began. His training continued out in the field with numerous electricians while studying the works from Mike Holt in basic electricity, grounding and bonding, understanding the NEC, and also consulting with Dave Stetzer, Sam Millam, Donald Zipsey, and numerous other leading EMF consultants. Andrew led the smart meter lobbying efforts against Duke Energy through the North Carolina Utilities Commission and was able to achieve a no-fee medical opt-out for North Carolinians. Realizing the effects from the power grid and the upcoming 5G networks, Andrew retired from horn performance and went full-time with his home EMF tracing service in May 2017. He completed a year-long Penn Foster online training program and received residential electrician's career diploma in May 2019. He is now OSHA 10 certified, a Building Biology Institute Advanced Electromagnetic Radiation lab leader, and currently works full-time for Bonneville Electric as a service technician and project manager. His Master of Music degree is in conducting, and he continues to lead a full orchestra for the annual ballet productions of the Nutcracker with the Triangle Youth Ballet. And BD Erickson, he is a proven leader and team builder, successfully navigating an ever-changing high-tech business climate. Having business and science degrees combined with Anthony Robbins Mastery University and Leadership Academy, BD is well equipped to lead his team in the highly technical sector of clean, renewable energy. Spanning 2 decades in high-pressure leadership roles, BD has been recognized multiple times for building winning teams, creating an outstanding corporate culture, and having a massive impact on company-wide growth. Currently running the country's leading clean power manufacturing facility and Montana's most proficient solar company, BD possesses a proven track record of sustaining high-level team buy-in, not simply by surviving, but thriving in the high-pressure environment of advanced American technology manufacturing. And as we get into Q&A, I want to let everyone know that we do have a special for those of you who are attending this webinar. If these products, the NCB and the Satic filters, are of interest to you, you can purchase them on shieldyourbody.com this evening and tomorrow for 20% off. There is no coupon code. This discount will be applied automatically at checkout. So with that, we are now ready to get into Q&A. And let me make sure I'm going to promote both of these gentlemen. And we already have a nice, healthy batch of questions to start with. But Andrew, BD, can you turn on your cameras, please?
Thank you, R. Great to be here.
BD, your mic on?
Yes, sir. Nice to see you.
Excellent. Nice to see you both again. Okay. So we'll try to make this a free-flowing sort of conversation, but I'll get us kicked off with a couple of the questions from the pod. And if you have questions for either of these gentlemen, please make sure to put them and to type them into the Q&A pod, not into the chat pod, because we'll probably miss them if they're in the chat pod. Okay, so Anonymous asks, why do the dirty electricity levels spike so much? I have a lot of the GreenWave plug-in filters installed and my DE numbers look pretty good. And then a few minutes or an hour later, they jump even with no one else in my house. They'll jump to over 1,000, like from a starting number of 22 or 28. And then they'll drop back down to the original numbers. Why does this happen and how can I prevent this? Andrew, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be probably what BD is going to talk about. You know, you have to look at all your appliances inside your home as, you know, variable frequency drives. Whenever your heat, AC, whatever the motor, the fan motor is going to kick in, you're going to have a massive amount of harmonics that are going to be just, and especially onto your grounding system, which is why I'm here. I'm talking about that. But if it's not coming from inside your house and you're sharing a transformer with your neighbor who has a pool motor that's going to be kicking in, you're going to be getting it in your house.
BD, any advice on what they can do?
He spoke correctly. We know that things like refrigerators and freezers work on a thermostat. Once they get, warm, then something turns on and that's their job to cool them. So we just have a lot of things in our home that have a tendency to cycle on or off automatically. When those things happen, then you're going to see a difference on a meter. Also, as Andrew was saying, if you share a transformer, what your neighbor does, unfortunately, can oftentimes have an effect on you. So it might not even be something in your home.
So is there anything that they can do to protect against these spikes?
So that's why Satic has such a different view than GreenWave and Stetzer. Satic loves to wire something in at the panel. It's not about being different or about being better. It's about being different. It's a way that we can definitely isolate that home or that apartment or that townhouse from what the neighbors are doing. So one step is adding filters, as you've done, and that's awesome. Another thing would be, making sure you turn things off, as we've talked about before. As many things, the less things you have on, the less things that can cycle. And wiring something at the panel certainly does the part B of that, separating you from the house, from the grid, from the transformer, etc.
Now, following on that, BD, you were just talking about your wiring unit. Andrew, the NCB has a wiring unit as well. How do you work with an electrician to get them to do this?
All right, so I'm going to give a first layer answer and then we can dig in deeper. With electrically sensitive people, because that's what we're talking about here. We're not just talking about any Joe. We're talking about a community of people that have demanded changes in standards, in behaviors. Electricians are being asked to do things they have no idea about. So you get an expert, a specialist that knows about dirty electricity, and you're going to be leading the electrician through the learning process of how to track down whatever we're calling. Some people call it EMI, electromagnetic interference, or dirty electricity. How do you find it is not easy. And there's specialized equipment. There's spectrum analyzers that you can clip on different wires to analyze. You turn breakers on and off. You see if levels go up and down. You have electric meters. You have magnetic field meters. You have all these different types of things to try to figure out what source, what circuit. So the simple answer is you need to hire somebody to help you through this process of finding it. Otherwise, you just throw your breakers off and try to figure it out that way.
So when you say hire somebody, you're not talking about a standard electrician. You're talking about maybe a building biologist.
Correct.
Okay. And BD, are your products designed to be installed? Your wire and products, are those designed to be installed by licensed electricians, or do you also need to have a specialization?
Actually, in most jurisdictions having authority, since ours does not require an inspection or a permit, a technical person can do it because the code is that it's installed correctly. And that's more of the code it's done properly than by whom. Sometimes you can find these people in one individual. If ever you're having a question about getting a Satic product installed, please call Satic and see if we've got somebody in the area, because oftentimes, having been in the business for 15 years, we have an electrician in the area who came in eyes wide open or skeptical and has installed a few of our things, or many of them, and is getting it now and has an idea of how to spot it, and will actually be a force for good with you in trying to navigate it, find it, and getting installed. That doesn't mean we have an electrician everywhere. And so unfortunately, we might not have one, but always ask, because if we've got someone there, then we certainly would prefer them. They're called a Satic certified installer, and we do have hundreds of them countrywide. And sometimes, even if you're a little poo-pooed, perhaps you hire an electrician and at first blush, they're not really fully to accept. Just be brave. Just speak and own your truth and say, you know what, this might not be important to you, but it's important to me. You know, I care about, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want to have installed, and this is the result that I want. Building biologists are great. Building biologists will look at a lot of things, including maybe radar things off this subject matter that might be important, but you'd be surprised with a little bit of a push, how many times an electrician could actually be that person for you.
Huh, excellent, thank you. Okay, Andrew, we have one that is for you, and it's I have the NCB, haven't tried to adjust it. Why should I try to adjust it? So I assume this person is speaking about the dial feature on the NCB. So why is it that someone would want to adjust the dial on the NCB?
So the reason that people buy the NCB is because they're using some sort of a grounding mat or bed sheets. They're attaching their body for some therapeutic reason to the house wiring, which is very dangerous. And that's the reason why I created the NCB, is to do two things: allow you to dissipate or drain away the electric field. And that's what most people are objecting to. And that's what your body is objecting to, is you have an electric field around you and you charge your body like a battery. And then you start having inflammation symptoms and other types of chronic ailments. So getting rid of the electric field, which is very similar to just turning off your breaker, makes people feel better. Now, if they're going to attach their body to the grounding conductor of their house, there's current on it. Current is the killer. You in no time ever want to have current going through your body. So the NCB has a dial where you can find the sweet spot of at what point will you stop the current, but still be able to dissipate or reduce the electric field.
Excellent, thank you. And we have an article about that. That's written by Andrew, and it's at shieldyourbody.com/NCB-dial. You know what? I should have just typed this into the chat pod while Andrew was talking, but just give me a second and I will do that. So it's shieldyourbody.com/NCB-dial. Great, thank you. Okay, and another one for Andrew, and then I promise we'll get back to Satic as well. I have an NCB. Why all the warnings? Is it safe for my sauna space?
So if you're talking about the NCB plug, I do not recommend plugging it into saunas or any appliance. That's not what it's for. An advanced practitioner can analyze where and when you can put it on an appliance, but I do not recommend putting it on an appliance because you want the appliance to drain its own noise, its own dirty electricity, its own electric field away from you and your body. So every time you touch the refrigerator, every time you touch a freezer, you're going to have energy, current, possibly going into you. And the grounding conductor takes the current away from you. If you start to choke that grounding conductor with the NCB, more energy will build up on the surface of the appliance. And if you touch it, it's going to try to go through you. So in general, do not use it on appliances, but use it if you're using a grounding mat or shielding. Something we'll get into a little bit more with RF shielding, but basically anything that's going to be touching your body, you don't want current going through your body. And that's why you need the NCB.
Excellent. Thank you. And just to, I think I touched on this in my presentation, but just to make it absolutely clear for everyone who's in attendance today, the NCB and the Satic products are complementary. They address different aspects of the hazards we're talking about here. So they don't overlap in functionality, and they can, in fact, Andrew, I believe you use both in your home. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
That's correct. So
Yeah.
the wired version blocks foreign current that's coming from a well or anything else touching the earth that comes in. Even though the breakers are off, there's still current coming in. So I needed the NCB Pro, the wired version, to stop that current coming in on the grounding conductor from the secondary earth reference.
Excellent. Thank you. So BD, this attendee says, I heard about meters for America and the UK. What about the rest of all of Europe? Do you offer some sort of solution for other grids?
We have 4 meters. We have the US, the UK, the European Union, and Australia currently in manufacture.
I did not know that. Oh, that's really cool. Okay. Excellent. Well, that was a very simple and positive answer. Okay, so Nicole asks, instead of unplugging, can we just close the breakers? Does that achieve the same effect as, because in my presentation I was saying the first line of defense is start to unplug things that aren't in use. Does turning off at the circuit at the breaker address the same issue?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
It'll even get more things, right? So unplugging something is very centralized to that. Turning off the breaker will turn off everything on that circuit.
Brian asks, we already have a few towns in Massachusetts vowing to go all electric. Gas explosions and the EU Global Climate Agreement predicated this. We're seeing an explosion of air-sourced heat pumps with variable speed fans. Ductless mini splits and hybrid heat pump water heaters are everywhere. What can be done to mitigate the high amounts of dirty electricity coming from things like this? Is the Satic wire-in unit comprehensive enough?
Absolutely, that's its job.
Excellent. Andrew, anything to add there?
Yeah, so everybody wants the simple plug and play solution and be able to go back to sleep and just forget about this. But I think we're in a time, the age of revelation, where we have to take off the scab, heal this wound. We have to all look at what are the really underlying issues, the problem with the grid, the problem with appliances, and we have these new diseases that are emerging that are being stimulated by electromagnetic frequencies. So the solution for variable frequency drives, there's a whole house solution that can basically protect you from the grid, and Satic is doing a great job of giving you this general protection you need. In specifics, with my extreme electrically sensitive clients, I'm finding that because the variable frequency drives put current onto the grounding system, it's better to have those appliances fed directly back to the main panels or directly back to a source that you can control to keep it isolated from the home electrical system. Now we're getting into, you have to have shielded wiring to contain the frequencies on the wire, not blend them together with other wires along the way of your home. You have them isolated. You can use isolation transformers if you must to keep it out of the noise of your house. There's numerous solutions, but you have this flowing of of current on the grounding system from the variable frequency drives that you need to allow to get out somehow and not contaminate the rest of the house. So now we're getting into strategies.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Brian also asks, can the wire-in model of the NCB, that is the NCB Pro, can that be used to create an effective backflow preventer on the bonding wire that leads to a water pipe?
You don't want to do that. You want a different solution for your water pipe. And I wrote a book on this because it's such a huge problem and it's such a dangerous situation. Your water pipe, if it is touching the earth, is a source of current, a secondary source of current in your home. And I go into detail what code is allowed to get that thing from not carrying current into your house. If you have a wire from your electrical system onto a water pipe, and if that water pipe is metal all the way up to a faucet where you or your child or your wife, his hands are wet and you're touching the faucet directly, you are now in the circuit. You're in danger. My solution is to come up with a way to get the electrical system removed from the water pipes.
Excellent. And that's, I think it's called the water pipe solution, right, Andrew?
Yes.
That's the ebook that's available on your website. So thank you for that. Sherry asks, why do I hear variable harmonics on electrical at night? I'm not entirely, I don't know what it is to hear harmonics. Do either of you gentlemen?
Yeah, I'm hearing one right now from my neighbor's bad motor. It's a C. It goes then every once in a while it'll raise a minor third as the next kick in, then it goes back down. I know exactly what she's talking about. It's very annoying.
And what it's the motor that's causing that, or?
Yes, and it's literally, I turn the power off to my house and I can still hear it. So he has to fix his machine, and it's literally inside the magnetic field of the neighborhood. And we can go into how the grounding system is carrying the noise. There's a magnetic field cast all the way across my house from the grid, and inside that are these frequencies. We can go on and on about the grid problem, but appliances, it really has to be you have to fix the appliance. The appliances, whatever, the diodes are burning out or whatever, there's some problem with it.
Excellent, thank you. And along those, what Andrew just touched on, BD, I think this is one where you might have some more insight. What are the better quality brands for air filters, fridges, stoves, ovens, and other appliances in terms of its contribution of dirty electricity?
So I think that's kind of a broader question that a lot of people have been asking where, well, what if I've got a VFD? Can the Satic help it? Or if I've got this or that? I kind of refer it to, how much is bad. And so, we wouldn't eat fast food or something for every meal a day. It would be bad for health. We might gain weight. But I think if you're on a road trip, one French fry might be okay because we're pretty robust creatures, right? And if you were smoking and you didn't want to have, bad health, do you put a filter on that cigarette? Well, yeah, but it'd be better to stop smoking. And so, Andrew and I have spent decades and a lifetime creating solutions to these things. Ideally, it'd sure be better if you didn't have it. And so I would never pick a VFD, right? You'd never pick that if you had an opt-out or something, right? Rheostats and dimmers, notorious. Well, people like mood light. Well, that's something where you either have to, do you really want to put a filter on that? As a healthy fellow human being, I'd say don't buy something from BD. If you can live without it, live without it. And if you want to use it, then be intelligent and very, use it sparingly, right? And so there are some things that are going to do this that we really can't. It's pretty hard to get around having a refrigerator or a freezer, right? And so those aren't really kind of opt-out things. What brand specifically? I don't have an intelligent answer for you on that, even though you guys know we have tested thousands of them, because every brand may make 20 or 30 different models, and not every model is going to be consistent. Mm-hmm. The older ones are better. The less complicated.
The older ones are better?
The simpler ones are better. You know, because nowadays it's got a TV screen in it, and it's got a receiver and a transmitter, and it's on the Internet of Things. You know, these are a nightmare. Don't buy a filter for that rascal. You know, opt out of him. So the less things that it's going to be turning on and turning off, especially with the screens. We know a couple of things. That's a diode. That's DC. That's gonna. We talked about this in your opening, Art. That's gonna create dirty electricity. And then also, is it on the Internet? Does it want to send a communication to you if you are, you know, at the grocery store and you're out of milk? We don't want any more RF in our homes. So really, the more simple the product is, oftentimes we found that has less causes or culprits, as we call them, for dirty electricity.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so does the wiring in my bedroom still carry dirty electricity if I turn off the circuit breaker for that room? And the answer to that question should be no, right?
Unfortunately, it's yes, because your neutral, there are three wires we're talking about. The hot is what's turned off with your breaker. The neutral and the ground are never broken, opened, cut off, unless you do something other than what you already have. So the neutral is tied to all the other neutrals in the house. Any 120 volt appliance running in the home is touching all of the other neutrals always. The grounding conductor is touching the neutral at your main service. There is a diagnostic that I do when I'm trying to find the lowest electric field possible, is when I install a double pole outlet switch. Basically, it's a light switch that will cut the hot and the neutral at the same time, which is allowed by code if it's off at the same time. You can't cut them at different times. When the hot and the neutral go down, there's less electric field. Now, the grounding conductor is, this is the real controversial one. There's an electric field around some grounding conductors because it could be carrying current. Whether to cut the grounding conductor as well with a switch, a 3-pole motor switch, is very controversial, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. You have to measure what's the resulting electric field with all 3 conductors cut versus just conducting the hot and the neutral. Now, all of this has to be done correctly. You have to have an electrician. You have to have the diagnostics correctly. You never, ever want to cut multi-wire circuit, neutral, shared neutrals, all this other kind of stuff. It gets more complex, but you have to understand the layers that we're talking about.
Excellent, thank you. Quickly, WM is asking, he has both Satic and NCB products, and I'm imagining they're the wire-in versions. And if either of you know of resources that might be able to help him with installation in the Port St. Lucie area of Florida, is that an area where you gentlemen know of qualified individuals?
I've got somebody named Josh. He's Josh Van Claire. He's wonderful. We'll connect you guys.
Okay, excellent. So WM, you can email in to hello@shieldyourbody.com, and my customer support team will connect you with BD's reference. Thank you very much, BD.
Of course.
Okay, so we have a question here, which I'm going to rephrase, but Susie is asking about Stetzer filters. And I think it would be helpful to explain the ways in which the products we're talking about here are different from Stetzer filters. So first off, I think I can jump in on the NCB side, which is to say what the NCB does, the Stetzer filters just don't do. They don't try to do it. It's not like we're saying the NCB is better than Stetzer. It's that the NCB does something that Stetzer and Greenwave and Satic don't do. But BD, I'm sure a lot of people, right? Because when they're going out looking for a dirty electricity filter solution, there are 3 main options, right? Stetzer, Greenwave, and Satic. How are the Satic filters different?
So they are different, and I won't just come out and say better, because I know, as you know, someone in this space, a power systems engineer and a manufacturer, I know that I stand on the back of giants, and I know that as time passes, technology progresses, right? That's just part of it. So the main component, there's really only one component in a Stetzer or a Greenwave, and it's a brilliant component. It's called an X2 capacitor. It's also called, a filter or a rectifier or a safety capacitor. I've read a lot of stuff between NASA and Texas Instruments, and this doesn't care if you're flat Earth or round Earth, on the testing they did and their ability to clean electricity. And so this component set has one large X2 in it, and it's a great product. When we designed the Satic product, we really wanted to look at it differently. So rather than using just one X2 in an enclosure, I don't know if you can see this, we use a lot of components on a circuit board. So we really felt that rather than using one large component, some ideas on that, if you have one and one fails, how many do you have? And also the way a capacitor works, it's a sponge. So when you wring a sponge out, when you put it in water, it will expand and it will absorb everything that it can. But you can't put Niagara Falls into a sponge. It can only hold so much. And that amount that it can hold is the rating of the capacitor, right? So the way they work is they'll absorb, and then ideally they clean things, and then they release. And I don't want to be technical, but I know that you can understand this. When you have a drippy faucet, the drip starts to build. And when the drip gets big enough that the surface tension is overpowered by the weight, it drops. That's how a capacitor works. So it's a sponge, and it fills up, and when it's to its capacity, it releases. And when you only have one, you're kind of getting pretty consistent clap, and that can create a magnetic field. And so Satic, using similar, almost identical components, use lots of them instead of one, so that rather than a large clap, you might get multiple releases over. Then if things have a hard life, or you drop things, or you get a surge, if one of those things does fail, but you have multiple, you're still at 80 or 90% effectivity. So the component sets between Satic and Stetzer are exceedingly similar. We just use lots of little ones instead. And that capacitor is going to be on the volt or the amperage wave. They don't have a filter on the voltage wave. So the Satic actually has 8 filters in it, and one of them is dedicated to the voltage wave. So not only cleaning the amperage wave, we're also cleaning the voltage wave. So I have nothing bad to say. It's a great product. I talked to Dave years ago about maybe adding some components. He wasn't interested in adding that. That's kind of why Satic was born, in just taking a different look.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a really clear explanation. I appreciate that. Lynn asks a question about all of the effects. Lynn's dialing in from Boulder. All of the health effects from dirty electricity. And Lynn, I just wanted to use your question as an opportunity to tell everyone that you will, along with the replay to today's webinar that you'll be receiving tomorrow, you'll also get a link to download an ebook version of my part of the presentation, which includes links to some of the items that I was talking about. Again, it was very top level, but the work by Dr. Millam, Dr. Havas, and Dave Stetzer, who BD was also just talking about. But Andrew, I think, well, actually, both of you obviously have experience with sensitivity. Andrew personally, and BD through your son. What are some of the effects that you have seen in your lives that led you down the paths that you've pursued?
So dirty electricity, specifically blood sugar spikes. These high frequencies act directly upon bacteria. Certain windows of frequencies do different things. This window up here, certain bacteria. This window down here, certain bacteria. So I'm not even going to talk about the human body and cell function, the voltage gates and all that kind of stuff. That's, everybody knows. Everybody knows. I'm going to talk about bacteria, mitochondria. This is what the conversation needs to be, because the research needs to catch up with what is going on with people's bodies right now. And the illnesses, the multiple sclerosis, Lyme, mold, all these other symptoms of electromagnetic exposure, because the body's immune system is broken down and the infections increase, we get certain diseases. It's an environmental toxin. So I personally have had a lot of Epstein-Barr virus, fungal infections, all the other headaches and all this common stuff associated with these frequencies. And if we're even going up to Wi-Fi routers, if you want to talk about, right on the back of my spine, up and down, the myelin sheath, I can feel those little suckers starting to eat away, and I have to get away from that thing and go take some CBD and, clean myself out to get that infection brought under control.
And BD, and what was your experience with your family in terms of the impact of dirty electricity?
Yeah, my company was formed because we moved into a house under high voltage power lines. And within a year, my son was behaviorally different. Still a happy guy, but suffering, right? And that's when I became aware of electro hypersensitivity syndrome. And for him specifically, it was an uneasy feeling and anxiety, almost like if you could hear, a high-pitched whistle or a horn or a vibration or something. Like, how do you find peace in that? How do you find calm in that? How do you find good deep rest in that? And over the years, we've got over 100,000 Power Perfect installed, and we've talked to so many people that describe their symptoms. And Andrew's brilliant. He knows at the mitochondrial level. I don't. I just know what people say. I know what they're feeling, and it's angst, it's dis-ease, it's discomfort, it's anxiety and pressure, and a lack of calm and a lack of peace and buzzing in the ears. And when you come home from a hard day's work or anything, we want peace, we want calm. And people with EHS, they really suffer to find calm. Like Andrew can hear it and feel it when his neighbor's pump turns on. I have to laugh because there's a part of me that kind of wishes I was sensitive in a way so that I could speak in first person. And yet I'm so grateful that I'm not. And so if you are suffering, our heart totally goes out, and know that people like Andrew and myself we dedicate our lives to trying to find peace for you, because we do have people in our lives that suffer. And I can't imagine a life where I couldn't turn something irritable off, almost like a toothache that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So, right.
That's brutal.
Those are the symptoms that I get told the most. And when they use filters or find it or turn something off, then the words that I hear most commonly are quiet, calm, and peaceful. And that's what we want for all of us, you guys, for sure.
And we'll get back to the more technical questions in a minute here, but I just want to take this opportunity to, Andrew, you talk about your sensitivity. I don't know if you use the word blessing, but as something quite positive. Am I phrasing that correctly?
Yeah, I've come to appreciate that without this challenge, I would have not left the matrix. I would have still been in the world of vanity and, self-grandizement. So through this challenge, I've had to completely reevaluate my purpose in life and learn new skills. And it is a blessing, because without it, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. And I believe you have, because I remember this from Overpowered that I wrote with my father. We talk about EHS being the canaries in the coal mine. And Andrew, I believe you've used the same exact, thank you very much. I believe you used the same metaphor, right? That the people who have the sensitivities like you do are canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah, and I often put a different wrinkle on the canary. A lot of people see the canary as the weakest, most frail thing. So we're going to take this really weak and frail thing down into the mine. So when it dies, everybody goes, look how stupid and weak that thing was. We're going to stay here and get our work done. No, it is the thing that is healthy and is affected by a poison. Carbon monoxide. You can't smell, you can't taste it, can't see it. It's an invisible disease, just like electromagnetic sensitivity. So when people start going down, there's a poison around, and I consider it a blessing, because wouldn't it be nice to know what it would take to get rid of cancer before we're stage 4? I see all these people all of a sudden, I've got stage 4 cancer. Well, what did you do up until that point? Did you know that you could change your life and not end up stage 4? Well, that's the blessing in electrical sensitivity, is now we can remove all these toxins.
Okay, so thank you both very much for that. I really appreciate that part of the conversation here. Moving on, Samir asks, is there a solution for reducing dirty electricity for backup generators? I understand that the green wave policy is to unplug filters while the generator is running. And I'll just say, Kathy Cook was, who's SYB's senior EMF specialist, who many of our attendees might know. She was just at my house doing an assessment, and I refused to turn on the generator. I was like, I don't even want to know, because you know, I need, when the power goes out, I need to be able to work, so I need to turn on the generator, and I just didn't want to know. But what, gentlemen, what can be done about dirty electricity from generators? And also, just to be clear, the reason I didn't want Kathy to measure is because generators are really big sources of this stuff. So yeah, what can be done?
You want to go first, Andrew?
No, go ahead, BD.
Okay. So generator power is as dirty as it gets, boys and girls. Let's face it, right? So I'd call generator power number one, inverter power number two. And just the way a motorcycle, you know, it goes up and down. And so as loads are turned on, the generator will come up to match that load. So you do want some filtering when the generator's on, but here's why a lot of times they're not compatible, because a capacitor becomes a phantom load. What's that mean? It means that it creates apparent power. What's apparent power? It's there, you can see it. It's not real power. It's kind of like foam on a beer. Let's say half your glass of beer is beer and the other half is foam. Well, what's the foam? What's there? You can see it, but is it beer? It's not really beer. That's what apparent power is. It's there, it's apparent, but it's not real power. That's the difference between real and apparent power. One's real, one you can read it on a meter. You can see it in your glass, but it's not doing anything. So what can happen? Less is more now. You do not want a bunch of statics or green waves or any filters plugged in with your generator, because it's going to create a phantom load and your generator is really going to phase up. So Satic obviously is the lightest little load there. We're actually thinking about making one now that's generator specific to have a very light load. So let me caveat that with, if your generator is really only running one or two very small things, then the least filter or no filter is the best. If the generator is really rolling to beat the band, and it's running the air conditioner and it's running your TV and it's running your Wi-Fi or your hi-fi system, it's usually not your Wi-Fi, and your air conditioner, your freezer, then a couple of filters are fine. And then I would suggest, honestly, if you're using Satic, Green Wave, or Stetzer, just one on A, just one on B, so that we are getting some filtering without causing too large of a phantom load. That's why they argue.
And Andrew, anything to add?
This is really a complex topic. If it's a backup generator, is it feeding the whole home? Is your wiring in your home all Romex, so no shielding at all? Yeah, it's going to be a disaster. So the house has to have shielded wiring to contain these frequencies, so you can only deal with certain loads, certain breakers that are critical during a crisis, your refrigerators, and try to keep the loads out of your sleeping areas. Try to keep, just keep it where you need it. Now, living off grid, it's a really, really hard life and how to figure this out. But I'm just going to say, in general, you need all shielded wiring, period, if you're using AC and generators. And that's a good place to start. And then talk to BD about the filtering.
Right. And just to clarify for our attendees and for myself, shielded wiring doesn't kill dirty electricity, right? Because it'll still conduct along the wires, but it'll stop emanations from along the line. Am I kind of explaining that correctly? Or
in general, you want to suppress the electric field, and that will be contained inside of the shielding. If it's wired properly, your magnetic field should be very small and contained around the wire. So if the electric field is reaching out into the room, and inside the electric field, you have all this noise and you're standing in that, that's not going to be good. So if you can contain all of that inside the wire, in general, you're going to be much better off.
Thank you. Okay, Dana asks, I want to build a clean home, clean electricity, no Wi-Fi, all wired. I want to keep all the toxins out of the home, paint, cabinets, like that. Is this going to be affordable? I want to find a builder who wants to learn how to do this and offer this to others. So I'll start. because I've had a couple of conversations with Andy Pace from Green Design Center. I almost got that wrong. Green Design Center, and former member of the board of directors of the Building Biology Institute. And he gave a talk at last year's Healthier Tech Summit. He appeared on the Healthier Tech podcast. And Dana, Stephanie, if you could get Dana the link to that episode with Andy, that would be great. But one of the nuggets that he shared is, if you're working with quality materials and you're starting from scratch, the cost to build a low toxin home and a regular home is about the same. And so that means if you're actually going for quality materials and you're going for quality low toxin materials versus quality regular materials, the square foot cost of the construction is going to be equivalent. Now, to bring it back specifically to the EMF and electrical side, does building new construction with considerations for EMF emissions from the electrical system, does that really impact cost in any meaningful way? Or is it just a matter of planning?
The conversation has to be completely reshaped. The existing house wiring is SHIT right now. We live in a completely destroyed environment. So to think that everything is okay to where we're starting it's crazy talk. What is the cost to our lives? That's the real conversation. To have a healthy home should be the minimum. Right now we have sick homes. So you spend whatever we have to get a healthy home. And then we start life. So just rephrase the whole conversation. It's not talking to somebody, well, the house is fine right now, we just want to add-ons to make it better. No. The house right now is destroyed.
Understood and agreed. The modern economy doesn't value a lot of things that are just kind of all thrown into negative externalities and kind of written off the balance sheet.
It's a race to the bottom. The minimal amount of code compliance, the cheapest particles, the fastest, the cheapest. It's all a competition in the marketplace for the cheapest thing, and that's the worst health.
And bringing it back though specifically, right? Because in terms of planning the electrical side of that home, the only real difference in material, Andrew, unless there's something I'm not seeing, right, is you advocate for the use of shielded wiring in the home, but everything else is the same, right? It's a matter of planning out the circuits correctly and so forth.
Where you locate the service, where the panels are, where you run the wires, all these kinds of things. It's a logistical thing that you do once and then you forget about it. And then the electrical wires, you get it run correctly. You do once, you forget about it. And then of course the dimmers and the LEDs and all the other kind of crap you just don't install. So a lot of this is just, you get it one and done.
Yeah. And if you're doing it at the start, that is, you're planning new construction, there's basically no impact on cost. The real impact on cost is if you're trying to overhaul existing construction, because then you got to start tearing out walls and relocating circuit breakers and so forth. BD, it looks like you have something to add here.
I do. So one of the major culprits of dirty electricity is wiring errors. And again, I don't mean to beat this up, but the best way to fix something is not buying a bunch of filters. The best way to have something is not have dirty electricity, right? So there are 9 different ways. There are 9 different variations on wiring an outlet. Only one is correct. So I have never seen a home, new construction, that didn't have at least one outlet where the neutral and the ground were not switched, bonded, etc. And that's just notorious cause for dirty electricity. Now you use a filter, you're going to exacerbate the problem. One of the writers had asked, hey, I've got a Satic and the number is still really high at the wire end. I can almost guarantee it's a bonded neutral ground issue. And so, the way we wire homes and using 60 hertz and all that is a completely different conversation, but working within the framework that we have, making sure that at sub panels, the neutral and the ground are not bonded, not bonding those whenever you can code wise, making sure that all of your outlets are wired correctly, because as Andrew was talking earlier, he kept calling it the neutral, the neutral, the neutral. I call it the common, the common, the common, because that always reminds you that, I've turned off the circuit to my home, but the neutral, the common touches everything. And here's some examples I have from that from my childhood. When my mom would come home or would be home after school, she would vacuum and it would put lines in the TV of Gilligan's Island. Now, my mom didn't climb behind the TV to plug in her vacuum. She plugged it in over there. Well, clean power came in on the phase, was disrupted by the motor, and now dirty electricity went where? On the neutral, on the common, because that's the return path. You excite the motor on phase and you go back on the neutral. So where does the dirty electricity really live? It lives on the neutral. And so Satic products that wire to the panel, and not to give a pitch on stuff, I really want to help people. We're the only product that I know of that focus on the neutral, because that's where the dirty electricity lives. That's where you almost can't avoid it, even by turning off the breaker to your room, as Andrew talked about. And if I send clean power in, I'm degraded by the use of the device, I get the dirty power out. Well, what's out? Out's the neutral. Out is the common. And so that's really where the vast majority of the dirty electricity lives, because again, it comes in clean, degraded by the use of the device, and out. We know two things about electricity. We learned them in 5th grade. They are always going to choose the path of least resistance. Always. It can't help it. And it's always going to find the way to ground. So if you have a bonded neutral or ground, that electricity is always going to take the easiest path to get the ground. That's why I love and I'm a fan of Andrew's products, because I just have not seen a home where they got it right on every single outlet. And so when you're building a home, just make sure that you demand that each one is checked as they build it.
Thank you.
If you don't
Yeah,
mind,
Andrew, go.
So consider, if you're electrically sensitive, probably 99% of electric sensitive people have started with a wiring problem in their house. So thank you, BD, for pointing out and having the maturity to be able to say your DE is going to be worse and you have to fix your wiring first. That's a really mature individual. It's putting health before his profits. I do electrical work all the time and finding, share neutrals and circuits that are creating a gigantic magnetic field across the entire room. And I'm looking at the people in the house and I see the dark circles on their eyes, and we're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong here. And just think for a second, how many diseases and how many ailments and how many relationships are destroyed just by wiring problems that are never found generationally.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. And VT, I'm glad you found that mute button. Okay, so we have, and we're still getting in a ton more questions here, so we'll get through as many as we can, but it's increasingly looking like we're not going to be able to hit all of them. This is obviously a really popular topic for people. So again, thank you both, gentlemen, for taking the time out and sharing your knowledge with all of us. Okay, Anonymous asks, I live in a brand new high-rise building in Manhattan. My sibling lives in an old apartment building built in the 1800s. Does the building location, the era the building was built, or the presence of businesses on the bottom floors, do all of these impact the amount of dirty electricity coming into apartments on higher floors in medium to super big apartment buildings? And so I'll just start by answering, yes, everything is a variable when it comes to dirty electricity. But the part of that question I thought was particularly interesting was the age question. So what in general do you find in terms of older construction versus newer construction, in terms of the prevalence of dirty electricity and obviously wiring errors and wiring standards that might cause it?
You have aluminum wiring in really old buildings if it hasn't been upgraded. Anything that's been probably in there more than 20 years has definitely some terminals that haven't been tightened enough because they're coming loose. You have rats eating insulation off of things. I would say if you're in an old building, just move out.
But if you're looking for a fridge, buy an old one. So move out. VD, anything to add to that?
It's all the same conversation, right? So if we're really looking for wiring errors as one of our major things, then the more opportunity for wiring error, becomes self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, I will say that if you can't move, if you are really stuck, taking the cover off an outlet and looking in with the flashlight, be careful. Obviously, don't stick a screwdriver or your tongue in it, but taking a look-see is rather benign and not that challenging. And so heal thyself a little bit, take what power that is within your reasonable power and look at your outlets. Get a little outlet tester in Satic's demo kits. We always send an outlet tester in there. People go, well, what the heck is this for? Well, you might not need a filter, silly goose. Your neutral and your ground might just be reversed. Switch that and you're off to the races. Send the filter back. So yes, wherever there's more opportunity for incidents for error is going to be worse, but it's all the same conversation no matter where you live.
Excellent. Thank you both. Anonymous says the Building Biology Institute provides their graduates who would be the consultants we'd hire to help us, providing them a directory of EMF informed electricians. Okay. Well, I'm just going to, so yes, the Building Biology Institute does provide a directory of both building biology environmental consultants and electromagnetic radiation specialists so the BBEC, they may not know because at the Building Biology Institute, there you can do building biology, the environmental consulting side, and then optionally you can also choose to do the electromagnetic radiation specialist. And unless you've been through the EMRS program, you may well not know anything about diagnosing and remediating dirty electricity. So you're going to want to go off of the EMRS list that the Building Biology Institute publishes. Now, when it comes to the NCB, I know that we have a public directory of consultants that Andrew has taught and qualified, and we have that up on the Shield Your Body website. So those are people that can help you with the installation of the NCB Pro. And BD, does Satic have a directory of experts that work with the wire-ins?
We do. This is a learning curve for me. This should be on our website. So Satic certified dealers and installers, they do need to be listed on their website. Currently, they're not. So
okay,
you have to reach out.
Yeah. So all they have to do is contact you folks, and you'll connect them with the closest resource.
Or real quick, the
Yeah.
NCB plug, you can stick it in the wall, use it for grounding mats and bed sheets. Easy. The wired version, do not buy it until, well, you can buy it whenever you want. Do not try to install it without a qualified electrician. You need to do everything else first. Solve all the code problems, fix all the wiring, do everything you possibly can. And when that is not enough, then the NCB Pro wired is the solution when the code cannot help you.
Yeah. And I should also add that every purchase of the NCB Pro includes a half-hour consultation with Andrew or one of the certified, qualified NCB Pro qualified experts that Andrew has trained. So, and you can use that to schedule it so that your electrician or installer is also on the phone, and they can work through all the details and questions you might have. Andrew has also prepared I believe it's a 78-page guide, which you do not have to, you're the customer, you don't have to read it, but B, you don't have to read the whole thing either. But that answers all of the kinds of questions that would come up when it comes to installing and making the maximum value out of your NCB Pro. Thank you. Let's see. So does the infrastructure below a street one lives in a rural location, suburb, affect the amount of dirty electricity entering a home? I mean, the answer is yes to everything, basically. Does anything impact the amount of dirty electricity entering a home? The answer is yes. If it's connected to the grid. And actually, honestly, it can also be other things that aren't connected to the grid, like the presence of Wi-Fi. I mean, those are connected to the grid, but I'm not talking about the power. Radio signals can get picked up on these wires and contribute to the harmonics that are being transferred in the dirty electricity. Am I saying that correctly, guys?
Close enough.
Thank you. So yeah, so anything that's connected to the grid and anything that communicates wirelessly can contribute to the amount of dirty electricity you have. And you don't know it unless you measure it, right? Because it doesn't mean you have really high levels, doesn't mean you have really low levels. Also, I would say, based on my knowledge, and I'm not an expert like you two gentlemen, just because like you could live in the middle of nowhere and have very little infrastructure and very like no cell service and things like that. And so you're living in what is ostensibly a low EMF environment, and your dirty electricity could still be really high. Is that a scenario that could happen?
Well, Dave, that's why he has his started his whole business, because his grid is downstream of a gigantic, what is it, a milling operation or something, drilling, earth moving, whatever, and it has destroyed the grid because of all the dirty electricity. So you may be out in rural America, but you might be downstream of something horrible.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is same person who asked a question earlier. If we aren't supposed to use the NCB on a sauna plug, where do we use it? I'm confused. So the difference here, and I just want to make sure we're talking about, I hope, BD's still in the room. We just lost his camera. I want to make sure we're all using we're clear about the terms, right? Because with the NCB, there's the NCB, which is what you plug into an outlet. And then there's the NCB Pro, which is what gets wired into the grounding conductor in your home's electrical system. And the NCB, which is the simple plug and play version, that is designed to be used with grounding products. And that's different from a product that also has a ground, right? Because all appliances have a ground, but those aren't grounding products. But things like grounding mats or EMF field walls that have grounding snaps on them, these are the types of things that are we're talking about when we're talking about grounding products, and that's what you use the regular plug and play NCB for. The NCB Pro, Andrew, this is where I'm sorry, and just to underscore, you're not supposed to use it with appliances like your refrigerator or your stove or a sauna, the plug and play version. Now, Andrew, this is where the Pro comes in. So can you explain how the Pro would work in this scenario?
Right. So if you turned all the breakers off to your house and there's still current coming in on your grounding conductor, it's not, you're not the source. Where is the source? Source is coming outside of your home. I call it a foreign source. So how are you going to stop that current on your grounding system?
With the NCB Pro?
Exactly.
There we go. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, this is a good question. If dirty electricity runs on the wires, is it an electric field? What if you have shielded wiring? Electric fields dissipate within 2 to 3 feet from the wire, so does the influence of dirty electricity dissipate the same? Yeah, this is I know it's a broad question, but I think it reflects an understanding that a lot of people who are watching might have, right? So let's get into that. Is dirty electricity an electric field?
There are two components. You have a voltage wave, and that is creating an electric field. So there is a yes. Everywhere you have an electric field, there's a voltage wave. And in the voltage wave, there's little tiny blips and spikes and stuff on the voltage wave. There's also a current component to this. So variable frequency drives create a lot of noise because the way they are pulling the current, they are messing up the sine wave of the current wave. And how these are interacting is very complex, and I don't understand all of it, but I'm going to answer quickly. Yes, in general, you get rid of the fields, you're standing next to the wires, you're not going to be affected as much. Now, when you get into propagation of higher frequencies, will that travel beyond the electric wave? I don't know.
BD, anything there you want to? It looks like you're stewing it.
Yeah, Andrew nailed it, right? So the electrical wave comes from voltage and the magnetic field comes from the amperage. And so if you shield it, it seems like you'd reduce the electric field in proximity. It doesn't disappear it, but it should lessen it.
Thank you. Let's see. God, we're still getting more questions coming in. There's no way we're going to get to all of these. Okay, so Sharon asks, I have the Satic plugins. Can they be plugged into a GFCI outlet? I saw online if there is a leak, it could trigger the GFCI outlet, and that GFCIs are not compatible with a surge protector. BD, that's for you.
That is a fun and great question. And there are several answers to that. Oftentimes they're fine. What we're really doing with ground is if we don't want someone to get shocked, right? That's really why you have it, right? We don't want ground to carry any current. We've talked about that at great length, but there's a chance if you drop the blow dryer in the tub, that old thing, that you want that. Some of the GFIs are actually smart, and then you wouldn't want to use the Satic with it because you wouldn't want to interrupt that signal. You'd want to allow it to do it. So the answer is the brand. So if you can use it in another outlet, I think that would be wiser. Although in 99% of the models that I've seen, they should be compatible and fine. But since I can't know every single model, I'll answer in best practices. Avoid it if you can. Use a different outlet. And remember too that we really only have two phases in our house. We have A to neutral, which should be half of our outlets, and we have B to neutral, which should be half of our outlets. And so getting a Stetcher green wave or Satic on in A is going to have a limited effect on all of A, and on B, all of B. So you can be pretty judicious or pretty liberal, I guess the opposite of that, on which one you choose to put it in, because it really should affect that whole phase synergistically.
Excellent. Andrew, anything you'd like to chime in with?
Yeah, the surge protection versus GFCI, I don't see a compatibility problem with using a filter on it. I mean, I don't think the filter system is going to shunt so much to the grounding conductor. It's going to be more than 5 milliamps. I have a hard time believing that.
I agree. I agree. I read an article that one of them was kind of smart, and it literally communicates almost over the Internet of Things. And that particular model might have an issue, but the issue that 99.99% of us use, no, not at all. They trip so easily that the Satic wouldn't interfere with it at all.
Now, this person also mentioned that Sharon is a customer of your light bulbs, and she has one in the lamp by her chair, and it is so much better than the LED I was using. So BD, I thought this was a good well, A, I wanted to share that feedback with you, so well done. And then B, give you a chance to talk about these light bulbs. Why does a dirty electricity filter company make light bulbs?
Necessity, right? Necessity. It's one of the biggest culprits. And so when we talk about the culprits, there are some things that, we can live without. That if you can live without it, it's making you sick, or use it judiciously and turn it off. Well, how do you get around lights? You're not going to go kicking stuff in the dark. And the incandescent light bulb that Edison gave us 130 years ago was glorious. It's a resistor. It cleaned electricity. They lasted 100 years. They were cheap. They didn't go into landfill. I mean, it was a great product, but boy, I challenge you to find a good incandescent bulb these days. And so we know that the first switch was to CFL compact fluorescent lamp. And fluorescent lamps cause massive amounts of dirty electricity, harmonics, distortion, interference, electrofields, magnetic, the whole gamut, the whole list of things that could be called dirty electricity. It makes them all. And then they took that away and they said, we're just teasing about that. That was awful. Let's give you an LED, which is a light emitting diode. And what's a diode? It turns it into DC. It's like, it shuts the door, it flaps. And so they're constantly strobing. So LEDs are strobing at 60 hertz. It's just so fast that your brain can't really catch it. There's no way that that's good for you. Certainly not good for the sine wave on alternating current. So the reason we make light bulbs is we just said, gosh, do we want to sell more filters? Or again, my personality, can we try and stop it? Can we try and create something different that doesn't do this? So what this little guy does is he actually has a little capacitor in him and a little filter so that he can suck in and hold the charge to limit that clapping. And then it's got a tiny Stetcher filter in it. It has a tiny X2 capacitor in every single one. And it's a pain in the butt to make. And it costs us about $1 more. So they're kind of expensive, but there is literally a Stetcher filter in every single light bulb that we make. And we make them because we had to make them.
Wow. So they emit less, so they don't strobe. and they emit less EMF, or they
Absolutely.
cause less dirty electricity pollution on the system.
That's right. So on our filter, on the Greenwave filter, and on the Stetzer filter, when you plug in any brand X LED, like on our meters, I've got Lowe's and Home Depot lamps in our demo room. They go right to 15 or 1600 on all three of the main meters, right? There's three of us in the pool. It's Stetzer, Greenwave, and Satic. On all three of our meters are relatively similar, and it pings them all. Our lamp in a low EMF, low EMI environment should do nothing. In a high EMI environment, it'll actually bring it down. So when we're at trade shows and we're getting, 2000 readings on our meters, and then we turn our lights on, it brings it down because it's got an X2. It has a small filter in each one.
Excellent. Thank you. Here's a question I wanted to make sure, and we we have 50 questions in the queue. We're not we're going to wind down here in a few minutes because you gentlemen have been so generous with your time. But I do want to hit up a few more here. So Maurice asks, I use a direct wire from my bed sheet to an outside ground. Do I need an NCB?
Boy, this really opens up a can of worms. How can I answer this quickly? I would say, let's do a consult and I can tell you how to do this better. But if you're just going to drive a ground rod out in the yard and plug it to your bed, and you're going to dissipate your electric fields that way, you're also leaving yourself open to lightning strikes and whatever else you got in the whole world directly attached to your body. And if that bed sheet becomes attached to anything inside your home, it becomes a circuit, and it's going to have even more current on your bed sheet than before if you attach to your own home's grounding system. Now, I understand why you did it out there. It's because it's less noise out in your ground rod. Now, if you're happy with that and you want to keep doing it, great. Who am I to say? But if you're not happy with it and you want a better solution, there are options, and Rex Funk put together a terrific presentation on how to do this.
And that's on our YouTube channel. I don't know if Stephanie knows that link, but Steph, if you can find that on our YouTube channel, please share it in the chat pod. Thank you, Andrew. Let's see.
I always learn things from Andrew.
he's bottomless source of information. Jason asks, Andrew, in the NCB installation guide, you note that one of the do locations is the furnace transformer with third wire grounded to frame on low voltage side. Is the low voltage side a common source of nuisance? I'm assuming all the metal ducting conducting to the furnace would be charged.
Yeah, obviously the question is coming from somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about. Now, the code says if it's under 50 volts, it's not required to be grounded. So the low voltage side of the transformer is no more than 24 volts. So that's under 50 volts. So it's not required to be grounded. Some transformers literally have one of the current carrying conductors tied to the frame, tied to the metal frame. So I'm finding an amp of current on a coolant line, an amp of current on the grounding system coming from the furnace. Obviously, this is a health threat. It's not correct. It's not code. So I tell the client or the electrician, look, this is not code. Remove the grounding conductor because you have current. You have objectionable current. It's 250.6 code violation of what's happening here. We're witnessing a crime. What are you going to do, electrician? You either cut that wire, or if you're worried that it needs some sort of fault protection, then the NCB provides an effective ground fault path. So you install the NCB there.
Thank you. Okay, so could you go into additional things business travelers, people who are traveling city to city around the globe most weeks, should carry in their suitcase in addition to these filters? And I definitely want to get both of you gentlemen to answer or chime in on this question, but I'll also take this opportunity to mention Kathy Cook's course, which is, it's called Fly Healthier, but it's all about traveling and building up the resilience of your body in order to deal with the stresses of traveling. And EMF protection is a part of that, but she goes into a lot of things in terms of how you can prepare your body to make it more resilient for travel. And that's on the Healthier Tech site. And Stephanie, if you could please paste a link to Kathy's Fly Healthier course into the chat pod, I would appreciate that. And then Andrew, what do you recommend? I mean, because I don't know how much flying you do, but you go on the road.
Yes. So really briefly, colloidal silver, you can snort it up your nose, put it in your throat to get rid of the, the exposures to everything flying through your house, or the air, and sore throats immediately. Methylene blue. It dissolves, gets rid of urinary tract infections and all kinds of many other horrible things going on right now. Methylene blue is one of the first pharmaceutical drugs ever created, and it's the most safest things to do. You take it if you get a snake bite, but it's also extremely good for certain diseases. And of course, clove oil is great to put on mosquito bites. And there's one other thing I'm blanking out on, and I'll chime in after BD says
Sure.
something.
Yeah, BD, how do you travel with your son?
I always learn things from Andrew. I'm writing that stuff down just to know. I'm not only a panelist, I'm a participant.
Yeah.
So we don't travel without a couple of filters, right? We take them, like, even when you're sitting and you're waiting to board the plane, and we know that could be an hour or two, you're on a layover. You're sitting on a chair that they're all powered now, right? I challenge you to find a seat that doesn't have USB ports, which are really super convenient, but now you're sitting on it. You might as well put my son on a hot plate, right? So we go ahead and we do two things. We travel with our filters. One of the things too, like one of the ways that you can know when you plug your phone into that to charge, the little base, the charger gets really hot. Like, I challenge you to just start being cognizant of this. And when your charger's getting hot, wow, the DE is off the rails, right? That's just an indicator in our lives. When your phone charges slow and hot, not quickly and cool, okay? So that's an indicator. So number one, we travel with our filters, plug the unit right into our seat, plug our phone or iPod or whatever that, and when my son can literally feel it the minute you plug this in. I can't, he can. Number two, we take pieces of field shield. So this is a small travel piece here. It's got the little grounding cord, and my son's, his is exactly the shape of his suitcase. So he puts it in first in the bottom, he loads his gear in so that if he needs to sit on his tush, when we get to the hotel room or whatever, he jumps on his pad, plugs it in, puts it with the filter. In fact, he actually does the filter first and then grounds it through the filter. And I think that Andrew and I probably have a market opportunity here for anything that's going to be grounded, anything that's going to touch your body or whatever else, because you know that I love and I use Andrew's products. That might be a wise 1-2 punch there. We'll do some tests on that. But we just travel with our little num-nums. We just, how easy is it to carry a filter? They're UL listed. You can get it on a plane and a little tiny piece of field shield for your tush in your bed.
Num-nums and tush. That's we now have that recorded, BD. So
yes,
Andrew.
RF shielding, of course,
and
hydrogen. The Mercola has these little tablets. If you're doing a week-long tour, take a hydrogen capsule, the tablets you drop in water, a minute and a half later, you drink that. It keeps, the mitochondrial health and really well. And also methylene blue keeps the electron chain transfer going solid. So whatever's going on in your body, if it chronic fatigue syndrome, whatever, you all have this other energy source that it keeps you going. And jet lag is a major, major radiation hit. So you need to have these other things repairing you.
And Andrew, both, I believe I'm correct when I'm saying both you and, because you mentioned RF shielding, both you and Kathy travel with EMF shielded ponchos. Is that one of the forms of RF shielding that you're talking about?
Well, if I'm actually on a plane, I have a lead dental outfit and a hat and a skirt, and then an RF overcoat.
What's it like going through TSA for you?
I take it all off, so but then I build a fort in a hotel. So basically I get, you build a fort with your RF shielding.
Okay, got it. Got it. Thank you. Okay, this is a good one to end on. And we've been at for an hour and a half now. And again, you guys, you've just been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. This one's a little open-ended, but also I think quite useful. Barbara asks, so you test each outlet with a meter, then need a filter for each outlet, correct? So I'd like to use this question as an opportunity to explain how your plugins work, but then also where the wire-in sort of fits into the solution. So BD, let's start with you.
Yeah. So when my son was ill, the GreenWave and the Stetzer were both on the market. This is about 18 years ago now, 17 years ago, 2008, do the math. I looked at both of those and I didn't want the answer to be plug in a $30 device in every single outlet of my home. What happens with the capacitor too is you can get into leading voltage. What's that mean? I don't want to be technical, but I'm going to be one wave. You got the amps and the volts should be a little bit behind the other. You don't want to get the other guy in front. That's called leading voltage. And capacitors will do that. And that's not good for the rest of your things in your house. That's not good for your microwave. Not that you have a microwave, wrong one, don't have a microwave. That's not good for the other things in your house, right? So that's not a good solution. We put lots of little filters in each one. And again, one should affect everything a little bit on that whole phase. So if we've got 2 bedrooms separated by some distance and they're both on A, let's say, when you put a good filter in one of the bedrooms, the EMI reading in the other bedroom will go down unless you're creating the EMI in that room. So that's how you can also know where your culprits are. So if I know I'm on an A and your breakers go like this, your breakers go A, B, A, B, A, B. It's not A and B, common misnomer. It's A, B, A, B, A, B, they cascade. If you put one in on an A and it doesn't make the other 8 outlets go down, then you know that it's not from the grid, you're making it. And so one of the ways that you can find out where your culprits are by identifying the rooms like that, or turning the breakers off one at a time and cascading and going down and finding out which room your culprits are so that you can jettison that rascal. The easiest way, and the way we really diverged from Stetzer and GreenWave completely, are 2 things that people kind of consider weaknesses for our product. Number 1, it's expensive. They are. And number 2, they have to be wired into the panel, because we couldn't find a way to effectively know that we're touching every single drop of electricity in that house. Where do you do that? You do it at the distribution panel. So unfortunately it has to be wired in. And secondly, it's expensive because there's 36 X2s. There's effectively 36 GreenWave Stetzer Statics in the wiring unit. So if you did it, cost analysis, it's the same. So 2 things happen. You've got a ton of filters. You put it at the panel, the way the wiring, there's 1 wire on A, 1 wire on B, and 1 wire on neutral. You got it all. Power perfect. There you go.
Andrew, I want to hand that off to you, but BD, I apologize. I don't think I knew. So you're saying Satic is the only company that has a wire-in filter?
That I know of, and we're the only one that I know of that touches the voltage wave. Everybody focuses on the amperage wave, and that's 99% of our.
So the other manufacturers only create plug-in filters then, to be clear.
Well, yeah, Sign Tamer.
Of the big guys. Yeah, Sign Tamer and RxDNA. So there are a couple of the big 3. Okay. We're the only wire in, but Sign Tamer, RxDNA, and I think there's a new kid on the block too, Andrew. There are other people. Satic's divergence, again, is 2 major divergences from there. Number 1, we do address the voltage wave, and we really focus on the neutral, because the way devices are powered, you power the device, the energy is degraded by the use of the device back in the neutral. You got to get that neutral. And again, I'm going to wrap it before I hand it to Andrew. Oftentimes that neutral ends up on the ground where you don't want it. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Andrew's products.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, Andrew, as I hand this off to you, I want to take this moment to sort of highlight another difference between the NCB and DE filters like the Satic, right? Because you can get a Satic meter and just plug it into the outlet and see how bad the issue is. But with the problems that the NCB is designed to address, that isn't so possible, right? There is no just simple meter that you can use.
For about $50, you can get an amp clamp. Well, let's do this right. SLT, buy their orange micro amp meter. You spend $150, but you get a great device that even electricians aren't going to have the sensitivity. So all you got to do is clamp over a wire, and the wire, if it's carrying current, this thing can measure down to microamps, and that's what you want to do. So that's probably the best tool to use.
And then, so what do you like? How do you like? Does that plug into the outlet, or how do you get the actual measurement?
If you have a professional, he's got all the equipment, you have a Fluke 287 or 289 that actually, then you can actually test if you plug it into that. And then you see how much current is going to flow if I do something. Right. If I put this grounding mat here and I touch it, am I in a circuit? That's the most important thing to do. You can use the amp clamp around the little grounding wire. That's the cheapest way to do it. But there are other factors, but that's just a simple answer.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew. So, gentlemen, we still have, because they're coming in faster than we're answering them. So we still have 50 questions in the queue. We may have to do a part 2 at some point. So I'll be in touch if we're able to get that on the calendar. To answer a question that's popped up a bunch, and I said this at the beginning, but this is recorded, and you will get the link to the recording tomorrow. It'll be in the Zoom. It'll come from Zoom, and it'll have the link to the replay. It'll also have a link to download the ebook version of my 10-minute presentation that I started everything off with. And a final reminder that at the shieldyourbody.com store, and if you go to shieldyourbody.com/DE, you'll see all of the dirty electricity products that we have, which are the NCBs and the Satics. And those are now on sale, 20% off tonight and tomorrow. So this is a great opportunity to, because as BD has pointed out, these are not inexpensive products. They are complex pieces of engineering. And so this is a great opportunity to save some money on those purchases. I hope everyone found value in this. This is one of the most mysterious areas of EMF. And I've been doing this work now for about 12 years, and I know a lot more about DE now than I did then. But it's still one of the most difficult and complex and mysterious areas when it comes to both EMF, understanding the sources of it and how to mitigate it. So I really want to thank these two gentlemen, Andrew and BD, for taking the time, come together and have this in-depth conversation. Thank you both so much.
And thank you, this community that you are building is we die if we're alone. So everyone on this call that's listening to my voice right now, thank yourself for whatever you've gone through in order to be here so we can support each other. We're way, way too alone in this world, and we're starting this parallel culture, and we have to support each other because we're not going to make it unless we have this pat on the back by another person. We can't just live, well, this is what I think we're going to do and be alone. We're going to die that way. So thank you, for bringing us all together.
Thank you, Andrew. That was very kind. I appreciate that. And yeah, BD, thank you as well for dialing in from the retreat out there. And where are you, Utah or
Montana? Montana,
yeah. I mean, basically the same.
It's close.
So, yeah, no, this was such it's so hard to get this kind of information, and we did what we just covered in the last 90 minutes is, I think it's really fantastic. And the people in the room, we're seeing some really nice feedback coming through, and I think this YouTube archive is also going to get a fair amount of views. So thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. Remember, the sale that's going on now It's a discount that's automatically applied in your cart. So you don't need a coupon code, and you'll see the discount once you add the products to your cart. So thank you, everyone. And we'll see you again in a few weeks when we have Rob Metzinger from Safe Living Technologies coming on to talk about measuring 5G. So keep your eyes out on your inbox for the invitation to that webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.